In this lecture, I want to show you an example where the user input is used directly within JavaScript code, just to highlight the importance of analyzing and understanding where the user input is being used. Because in this case, as you'll see soon, we're going to be running the JavaScript code as is without having to enclose it in any tags. Again, as usual, you want to test everything in here. I'm just going to go straight to the search because I know this is what's vulnerable. We're going to search. And as usual, you want to exploit this as much as possible from where you see in here. So within the text box, if you try everything that we covered so far, none of it is going to work because this page does actually implement some protection against XSS vulnerabilities. Therefore, when you exhaust all the possible tests that you can do within this text box, and you can see that it's filtering everything and it's encoding everything and there's no way to exploit it, we're going to start looking for other places where we might see the string that we typed, where we can see the input that we typed being reflected inside the code. So again, Control F, and we're going to look for whatever we typed. So we typed test, and we can see the first instance of it in here, but we can see that there are 3 instances in this example. So you can actually just see one of them in here, and that's within the image tag. And we covered an example very similar to this in the previous class as well. But again, I've already tested this, and if you try the method that we did in the previous class with this one, it's not going to work. It's actually filtering it and protecting it properly. So again, I don't want to waste your time, but in a real life scenario, you would want to test this as well. So we're going to look for the other instance, and this time you can see the other instance is actually inside a JavaScript code or inside a script tag. So we have the start of the tag, the end of the tag. This is the JavaScript code, and we can see the instance of the input that we typed being reflected in here. So if you read this, even if you don't know JavaScript, it's pretty self-explanatory. So we have var, which is probably a word to define a variable. We have a variable name called search terms, and it's equal to the input that we typed in here, test. And we can see this time it's enclosed between 2 single quotes. So you can go ahead and look up what the single quotes mean in JavaScript, but usually in most programming languages, single quotes are used to define a string, and you can't really inject any variables inside that string. So whatever we're typing in the input is already being used inside JavaScript code. The only problem is it's being enclosed between 2 quotes, and therefore whatever we type in here is not actually going to be executed as code, because the browser is actually going to know that this is a string. It's just an array or a list of characters. It should not be evaluated as code. So all we have to do right now is break out of these 2 single quotes, and once we do that, whatever we type is going to be evaluated as JavaScript code, and therefore it should get executed on the page. So all we're going to have to do is close the quotes, the single quote that is already being opened by the application. It's already opening 2 quotes. As we said before, the first thing we want to do is complete whatever code that we already have, whether it's HTML code or JavaScript code. So we're going to complete it by closing the quote. And then we're going to need to add a semicolon to complete the sentence or complete this line, because in JavaScript, every line should end with a semicolon. So we can see this line ends with a semicolon. We can see this line ends with a semicolon. Therefore, to complete this line, we close the quote, and then we're going to add a semicolon to basically end this line. And then we're going to start a new line. And then in the new line, we're going to add our payload. And in this example, we're simply going to do alert 22. Once we're done with the alert, we finished our statement. So we're going to close it with a semicolon as well, like I said. And the only problem now, if you can see, our input is being put between the 2 quotes, and then we have the semicolon. So the program is automatically adding a single quote and a semicolon after our input. So now our input is going to be like this. We're closing the quote, we're closing the semicolon, we're adding our command or payload, and then we're ending the statement as well with a semicolon. But then the program is going to automatically add a single quote and a semicolon, which will probably break the code, because we're going to end up with something like this, which is basically not good. It'll probably break it. Therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 forward slashes to set everything that comes after the 2 forward slashes as a comment. Basically, comments tell whatever program that is executing the code that everything that comes after the comment sign is not part of the code, so you should neglect it. Therefore, when the program automatically adds the single quote and the semicolon in here, the program or the browser is gonna know that these two characters are part of the comments, so they're not part of the code. And the code is gonna end like this. This is well defined because we have a function and at the end of it is a semicolon, which is exactly what we need to have in JavaScript. Therefore, it should all work. So I'm just going to remove this because it was just showing you how this would work. And we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it in here. We're going to search. And perfect. As you can see, our code got executed. The alert code got executed, which means that we managed to inject JavaScript within this page, which means that we managed to discover a reflected XSS vulnerability. So the usage of the comments is not the first example that you probably have seen, because we do this with SQL injections as well. A lot of the time we have to comment everything that comes after our payload or after our exploit, so that we tell the server-side languages in that case, or whatever interpreter interpreting our code, that everything that comes after the comments is not part of the code, and therefore our injection should be well defined and gets executed on the system.